What if nothing fell into place for the Milwaukee Brewers here in the offseason? And the Brewers had to go into 2024 with this particular roster right here. Let's get to it. Coming up next here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Certainly it's been the case for teams like the Pittsburgh Pirates or who knows, have gone into the season and they said to themselves, the fans or even the front office looked at the roster and said, oh boy, what are we in for? This guy's going to be our starting pitcher. That guy's going to be our starting shortstop. What are we doing with another reclamation project playing every day on our team? Certainly that's happened because sometimes you go through the baseball winter meetings, you go through the general manager meetings, and you go through all this and things don't fall into place. We'll get to all that coming up next here. Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. This is Chuck Freeman, longtime sportscaster here in the state of Wisconsin and the first-year host of Locked On Brewers, proudly the first-year host with all you great Brewers fans out there. And, of course, I am one of them, being a longtime Brewer fan here in the state of Wisconsin. And, I've been doing this for a long, long time, covered this team for a long time, been through a lot of these winter meetings, these winters where we didn't think the team was going to get fixed and all that. Something happens, and, we went from hating our team to loving our team. And right now, I don't know if we really love the roster right now, but a long ways to go. We're in December here, but I thought on a Friday here, we'd have a little fun with this. Download us on Google, Spotify, Apple. We're on all the major downloads. That's all the audio platforms. We're the number one Brewer podcast on the internet for a reason, because you great Brewer fans out there. And of course, go to YouTube, search Locked On Brewers, type in Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. That'll alert you every time we drop an episode on Locked On Brewers. Yeah, the teams have gone into the seasons with off seasons with great expectations, thinking this is how we're going to fix our team. But it takes, as a great general manager once said, it takes two to tango as far as making a trade. You've got to have a great trade prep. You could have all these good ideas and on players you want to get and trade for and give up and all that. But, you got to make things happen. Last year, the Brewers did make the Will Contreras thing. That just happened to magically fall into place with two other teams. Next thing you know, the Braves were getting their all-star catcher. And turned out, wow, where would the Brewers have been without Will Contreras? And how that fell into place because he was their offensive MVP. And now, finally, the Brewers have got a starting catcher that they can keep around for a little bit and who's a bona fide heart-of-the-order guy. At least on this team he is. But, that's not always going to happen. You might run into this offseason and, have aspirations of maybe trading Corbin Burns or, picking up this guy or solidifying a couple of spots. But it turns out maybe in the offseason you can't get there. I thought last offseason, the roster going into the season, by May, I was like, oh boy, this is what we have. This is how I felt about the Brewers. I felt by May, this is what we're settling in with the Milwaukee Brewers. Whoops. That was my wake-up call today. It was late night last night, not doing anything in particular, but getting work done. Just getting work done because my kid is playing in a 12-year-old hockey tournament at Notre Dame this weekend. So first time to South Bend. Anyway, sorry about that. Yeah. I didn't think the roster construction by May, when some of these guys started to get hurt and all that, I was like, even going in, I looked at it like, God, how do we expect to contend with this roster? But they did. Offensively, it wasn't, I thought it was poorly constructed. They weighed, again, I never liked the idea of Rowdy Tellez as my everyday first baseman. Third base, they banked on Urias being their everyday third baseman. Got hurt. Remember that Cubs series? And, thank God a guy like Monasterio came up and gave them some big at-bats. Where would they have been without Monasterio? Now, another guy, we're going to get to him in a little bit, who I look as a utility player, but he might be able to start right now again, and he might be to play that same position and contributing just as much, we hope, the way the roster is constructed right now. But this is just a fun. I know there's a long way to go, but I'm saying, what if nothing happened with the Milwaukee Brewers here in the offseason and they couldn't find trade partners or they didn't come up with a key free agent signing? We'll see. We'll start the catcher spot. Great. Nothing to do there except the backup catcher spot. We all love Will Contreras. As I just mentioned, the trade, three-way trade, the offensive MVP of this team. We love Will Contreras, but they got to get a backup. Obviously, Caratini went to the Houston Astros, but we got to have a backup for Contreras, and that's fine. It might be Jefferson Curo. Who knows? But we're fine with the starting spot. That's one spot we're really good with. First base, not right now, is Bauers starting on my team. Jake Bauers, I know they got him from the Yankees and all that. Another guy who they're trying to figure out, but he would not be my starting first baseman going in opening day. That would belong to Christian Yelich. I'd put Christian Yelich at first base. Jake Bauers is not starting for me at first base. I don't care if that guy tears it up in spring training, because I've seen that story before of players doing that. No, Christian Yelich is my starting first baseman. I'm bringing him to camp, and I'm getting him over at first base. Big fella, I know you didn't want to play first base when you got here, or you signed this $240 million deal, but son, you're playing first base. You got to play first base for us. This is how we got to win this team, because we got too much of a crowded spot. I tried trading you maybe in the off season. Well, you're not going to tell them that, but first base is the spot you're going to go. Okay. And, hopefully, Yelich got a good attitude about it and will play first base, because that's got to be his position. I think as of right now, again, this is as of right now, as of December. Bryce Terang, he's my second baseman as of right now. You're hoping and praying that the guy hits better than he did last year. You're hoping he does, because I think offensively, that's not, you don't want to, you're trying to win a pennant here, and you got to wait it last year. He had a trip down to the minors. He's got to get better offensively, but right now he's my starting second baseman. A++ defensively, second base. We know that, but we need him better at second base. Shortstop Willy Adames. I'm going to say that Willy Adames had a bad year. I'm going to bank on, I don't want to say he's in a decline. He's still young. I just want to think he had a bad year. Maybe fix the mechanics and do a few things. But there were so many times we thought Willie would go on a streak for a couple of days and think, oh, Willie is coming. Willie's back. He's back. And then I'm coming 0 for 21 streak. But Willie right now is my starting shortstop. And, the power numbers I thought were there. Great. He did a nice job in the power numbers. Everything else. He's going to be obviously great defensively at shortstop. But getting on base was a problem for Willie last year via base hit. So let's get Willie. Willie would be my starting shortstop right now. And I'm okay. I'm banking on Willy Adames not being as bad as he was at times last year. Third base. Boy, I hope they fix this spot. Monasterio, the aforementioned Monasterio, is playing third base. And who heard of Monasterio? Who heard of this guy before he came up? And when he came up, thought, he's just going to be here for a couple of days, provide us with, just fill in the hole, get the job done over there defensively and do things on this team that they need you to do. And he did. He filled a bunch of different spots in this team, and he played everywhere. He played in a lot of different spots. But offensively, he came through. But I look at Monasterio as a utility guy. I do. Maybe a starting third baseman on a team that's going to finish in last place. Okay. And the Brewers did it with their pitching last year, not because of Monasterio was at third base, but he was a stopgap. The pitching is not going to be as good next year, I don't think. But Monasterio right now would have to be my third baseman, and I would not be happy with it, but that's the way we're going to have to go. As of right now, Monasterio is my third baseman. If I'm Matt Arnold sitting at my desk this morning and I'm saying, boy, look at my lineup here. I got there's no way I'm good with Monasterio playing third base. I mean, you would think. Any logic would tell you Monasterio is should not be my everyday first baseman if I'm trying to keep up with the Joneses here in the division. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. This show is brought to you by FanDuel. America's number one sportsbook. The weather's getting colder. The NFL wants you to stay hot by watching their games. We're going 17 weeks, 18 weeks, 17 games, 18 weeks of the schedule. And, we're going into January, and there's lots and this weekend, there's college basketball as well. Full lineup. We're getting into the brunt of college basketball. We've cleared college football Saturdays right now, and we're getting into college. The bowl game's coming up. We got the Army-Navy game coming up on Saturday. But what I'm trying to tell you is FanDuel is the way to go. FanDuel. It's cold outside. Hey, you're going to be watching a lot of sports. Check in with FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. $150. Where can you go wrong? A winning $5 moneyline bet, that's easy to do. If your team wins on that moneyline bet, you're going to get $150 in free plays. Now, if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's a great time. As I mentioned, colder outside in some parts of our country. And, there's a lot of sports going on. A lot of sports. There's going to be the NBA in-season tournament coming up on Saturday night. The NBA got LeBron there, so they're all happy. And they're taking on the running gun Indiana Pacers. So you can bet on that and all that. So get on to the action this weekend. Spreads, player props, over and unders is all there. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. Kick off your entire winter with FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, when we return, we will get to the outfield and the pitching staff as it stands right now, and what would be my opening day lineup. All that coming up next here on Locked On Brewers. Welcome back to Locked On Brewers. Chuck Freeman, your host. Good to have you along here on a weekend version. Just have a little fun game here talking about what my opening day lineup would be. Not, the batting order, but my lineup. What would I have out there? And so far, my infield, I'm not really liking it too much. But this is how the roster stands right now. Now, the outfield, I love the outfield. The outfield, man, lots to choose from. Lots of presents under that tree to choose for my outfield. But here is my starting outfield spot. I would start Garrett Mitchell in left field. I'd give him the left field spot. I'd move him over to center to left, and I know he's a center fielder, but I'll put my best players out there. Garrett Mitchell is my starting left field. Churio's on this team. All right. He's starting in center field. I think if he makes the team, there's no way he's coming off the bench. If Churio's making this team, he's not going to be a utility guy. Somebody did mention it on Twitter. Oh, he'd come up and he could fill a bunch of different spots. No, Churio's coming up and he's playing every day, just like the rest of these guys. They're developing him, and while they're trying to contend, like they did last year, they developed players while they were contending, and I'm good with that. Good teams have to develop players while they're trying to contend. You got to play your stars, but you got to develop other players as well. Garrett Mitchell in left. Okay. Assuming he's healthy and ready to go, we assume the shoulder is going to be fine. Churio's going to be my center field. Young guy, 20, 19 years old. Go out there and do what you do. Pat Murphy, he's going to say that, well, Churio's got to win a spot. There's nothing guaranteed, but I think Churio has got enough talent that he's going to make the opening day roster. All right, and that's the way I'm going right now. Frelick is going to be my starting right field spot. No problem there. If they don't trade him or whatever, which I assume they're not going to trade him. So I'm going Mitchell, Churio, and Frelick, left to right as my starting outfield. And my DH, Tyrone Taylor, as of right now, is my DH. Okay. Capable of playing the outfield, obviously, in any of those spots. Young guy to have it as a DH, but he's my DH. You could have gone Yelich as your DH and Bauer's playing first base, but Bauer's, to me, I want Yelich at first base, and I'll take Taylor over Bauer's right now in my lineup, and Taylor would be my DH. So that's the way I go. Contreras catching, Yelich at first, Turang at second, Adames playing short, Monasterio at third, Mitchell in left, Churiel in center, Frelick in right, and Tyrone Taylor, my DH. So my starting rotation, I look at this, and you almost got to take a triple take at this, because you look at it and say, this is my starting rotation going into the season. As of right now, Corbin Burns is my opening day starter. Burnsy, my opening day starter. Freddie moves up from the 3 spot in the rotation, the number 2. Wade Miley moves up to number 3. So you got Burns, Peralta, and Miley. I mean, 3 solid starters there. Again, Miley, a number 3 starter at this point, 38 years old, 37 years old, that is. He's my number 3. Adrian Hauser would be my number 4. God, a guy who I thought would be best suited coming out of the bullpen last year. Right now, he's my number 4 starter. Cross your fingers. And Colin Ray, who filled in all the gaps anytime he was called up from Nashville last year, he's my number 5 starter. So that's the way we're going. This is not a great rotation right now because last year, of course, the Brewers leaned on the rotation. This is a rotation you cannot simply lean on. So you got Burns, Peralta, Miley, Hauser, and Ray as your 5-man rotation. I look at that team right now, and I'm looking at it, maybe 80 wins. Maybe 80 wins the way this roster is constructed right now without Woodruff. The offense, young guys. Again, we don't know what we're going to get from Churio, but with the pitching staff and the bullpen, you're going to have Williams coming out. The bullpen is pretty much the same. You like that bullpen. The bullpen is strong. And you're hoping some guys out of the bullpen, like the Bryce Wilsons and the Hobie Milners, do their job, their yeoman's job in the middle relief like they did last year. Because Devin's going to be great. Uribe hopefully takes another step in what we think is going to be a great career for him. Continue to throw 100. And Peguero, I thought he had a fine season last year. Elvis did a nice job for the Brewers. So, yeah, the bullpen, coming back with that bullpen from last year, rock solid. Good with that. Bullpen took a major, or the starting rotation without Woodruff in there. Man, I just, I'm a little fearful of that rotation. But that's my rotation, I think, of as of right now. I'm going to go with those 5 guys. Those are my 5 guys. So that's my lineup. That's my team. We'll talk about a few other things with this coming up next and what's next for the Milwaukee Brewers, so we don't have to go with this lineup. All that coming up next here on Locked On Brewers. Welcome back to Locked On Brewers. Chuck Freeman here, cruising into the weekend. Hope you all have a great one as we come back from the baseball winter meetings. Find us on Google, Spotify, Apple. We're on all the major downloads. Download us on YouTube. Search Locked On Brewers. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell, and we'll be there for you. We'll be here through the whole off season talking Brewers baseball with you. And so far, nothing has dropped post baseball winter meetings out of Nashville. There's some movement by other teams right now, but nothing yet of the Milwaukee Brewers. And I don't panic. I know some of you guys are starting to panic a little bit and wondering what's going on with my team. Are we going to get better and all that? Yeah, I mean, I just gave you the stark reality of what could happen if nothing happened in the offseason. One of those scenarios, if nothing happened with the Milwaukee Brewers. But we assume things are going to happen with the team. But as of right now, the roster I constructed with this team, the starting lineup and the pitching, the combination has 80 wins in my book. 80 wins. Because I'm thinking other teams in this division are going to get better. The Cardinals, are not going to settle for what they did. The Cubs are going to get better. That they have a growing team and they're going to get better. They're going to put in a few pieces there. Just don't get Shohei. Don't surprise us by getting Shohei. You already stole our manager, and they got better with Craig Counsell as their manager too. The Pittsburgh Pirates are still going to be bad, and the Reds are making some improvements. The Reds are getting a little better right now in the offseason. And there's rumblings about Dylan Cease going to the Reds, unless he's already gone. I don't think he has. I haven't seen anything, but there's rumors that the Reds could be getting Dylan Cease, so that would be a big get for their rotation because the rotation isn't all that good. But yeah, right now the Brewers are an 80-win team. But going here into December, and what has happened with the Milwaukee Brewers is we get into our winter, and out of nowhere, it could be a dark January day, 5 degrees in Wisconsin, and the Brewers pull off a trade. Now, are they going to pull off a trade like the Bucks did and got Damian Lillard? The Bucks version of that, or the Brewers version of that, would be getting Pete Alonso, who just had a birthday the other day. That would be just unbelievable if the Brewers would somehow get Pete Alonso this offseason. And I'm not saying no to anything. So I think Attanasio, as much as people want to criticize him financially, this has got to kill him that he was out of the playoffs in 27 hours. And if he doesn't see what you need for a baseball team to compete with the Joneses, okay, and that this team has got worse in the offseason, he already had the Cubs take our manager. All right. So going into 2024, you are not selling opening day tickets with this particular roster, this particular opening day lineup that I put together, or that 5-man. That opening day starter, by the way, would be Corbin Burns. So you got to do a few things in the offseason. You really got to get that first base spot fixed up. And yeah, I got Yelich playing there, but I guess, could you ride? I guess you could ride with Yelich at first base, but third base, I would say if Yelich is going to be your first baseman, and you go with Mitchell, Churio, and Frelick in your outfield, which is, I think a lot of you would be great with that. Yelich is your first baseman. Yeah, I would ride I'm okay riding a 2024 with Yelich as my first baseman. Not in the outfield, but there's no way I'd want to go in 2024 with Bowers as my first baseman. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But third base, you better fix that spot. How they have not fixed the first base spot, though, since Prince left. You would think first base would be one of the easiest spots to fix. And just look at the guys they've run through there. All the guys they've run through there. All the guys. I like Zeus at first base. I did. I always liked Zeus at first base. I liked him. He was on the 2018 team. I always liked Zeus. But none of the guys worked out. Nobody worked out. They dated a lot of people at first base, and no one stuck around. There was no one they wanted to marry at first base. And maybe they still find a first base, but then they have other plans for Yelich. I don't know. But Yelich right now would be my first baseman. Third baseman, Monasterio is my third baseman. They really got to do better in that. Got to do better in the power numbers. Got to do better at situational hitting with this team. And they definitely need some improvements. I would say, of this projected opening day lineup that I put together, the only guys who I'm confident are playing in that infield, the only guys who I'm confident at all of being on this opening day roster, this opening day lineup that I constructed, the only I would say Terang, I would say Terang, I almost said Urias, Adames, Mitchell, Churio, and Frelick. I'd say my outfield is set. That's going to be my outfield. And Terang and Adames. They might DH Yelich. So first and third are the only positions I think are totally uncertain with this team. Because the catcher spot is solid. Second, you're going to go with Terang. You're going to roll with Adames at short, and you're going to roll with those guys in the outfield. So third and first base, unless they play Yelich over there, man, I just don't see a situation of playing Jake Bowers. Left-handed hitter. He's got some pop. A few years ago, I liked him. I just, we got to go in a different direction in that thing. But, all right, that's going to do it for the show for today. Guys, you're hearing Ohtani is getting a tremendous offer from the Toronto Blue Jays. Hopefully he stays there. Yeah, it's a shame that the Brewers can't play a part in that, but let's get Ohtani. That's going to help the Brewers as well. Get guys like Ohtani in the other league. And that the other teams in this division don't get better. But I think they're going to. There's going to be improvements made everywhere in this division as we know it. And the Brewers do have to keep up with the Joneses because they're going to fall behind. They got away with it last year. Again, I thought going into the season last year, if you look at the end of the day, other than Contreras, poor roster construction. Other than the starting pitching and the bullpen, the rest of the roster I just thought was not all that good. That's going to do it for me. Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you all everydayers for following us along You follow us along on my social media account, Chuck Freeman, FREIMUND. Follow me along there on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. Hit us up on the YouTube page. Go to Locked On Brewers, search Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. We'll be with you every day. And then coming up on the platforms, the audio platforms, which a lot of you download in the morning and all that, and download on your way to work or school and all that. Set us an alert there and download us on your favorite, wherever it is, Google, Apple, Spotify, whatever it is. Download us. We're the number one podcast on the internet because you great Brewer fans out there, we're going to continue to grow here in the winter, and hopefully our Brewers baseball team grows with us. Have yourself a good weekend. Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. So long, everybody.